It's the beginning of our Board of Regents two-day meeting. My name is Lisa Keohokaloli Shower, and I am the chair of the Research and Academic Affairs Committee. I want to welcome my fellow regents, Blankenship and Cerna. We missed having Regent Powell attend, but she has been briefed and has provided just a little bit of feedback that I'll share later in the meeting. I want to announce that we are going live on Zoom and YouTube, and that the audience, that the regents as well as the presenters are participating in these meetings by phone and via Zoom. If you are not speaking, please just a reminder to mute yourself so that we don't hear the background noise and we are able to hear the presenters. So we have several action items and we have some presentations today. So let's get started. The action items will both be presented by Provost Elizabeth Chilton. And so if you want to go ahead and get started, the first is to establish a Department of Viticulture and Enology, an action item that we discussed at our last meeting. So Dr. Chilton.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you and good morning, everyone. We discussed this one at length last time, and the full proposal should be in your board book. But the proposal is to establish the Department of Viticulture and Enology. I think one of the comments last time was we thought we already had this, and some surprise that we didn't. You know, this is obviously an area of longstanding expertise and also interest at WSU with great potential. And so the overview, I won't read it to you, provides a brief history of the program. We have carefully reviewed this. It's also been reviewed by our Faculty Senate Executive Committee during the last summer, and discussed with the Faculty Senate in September. And this would be in the College of Agricultural, Human, and Natural Resource Sciences. Happy to try to answer any questions that there may have been since our last discussion.
Are there any questions regarding this action item? Okay. I also did forget to mention that I do want to welcome our faculty representative to the Board of Regents, Dr. Crouch. Sorry, I did not mention you in my opening. Glad to have you part of this conversation as well.
Thank you.
The next action item is to discontinue the Masters in Public Affairs. And Dr. Chilton, you reviewed this with us last time. Do you want to give an intro here as well?
Absolutely. So we had a little more discussion on this proposal last time than viticulture and enology, just to try to understand and make sure that we were continuing to serve students. As we mentioned, it partly had to do with both declining enrollments in the program, but also interest in other areas that are related. So for example, by discontinuing this program, we've already stopped admitting students to the program. Again, there are only 4 students currently enrolled. We will obviously make sure that they continue to be able to pursue their studies. But then faculty and staff time will be redirected more to the undergraduate program, the Bachelor of Arts in Public Affairs in Vancouver, and connections to the PhD program in Pullman. So really a shifting of faculty and staff resources to make sure that we're focusing on the degrees that both students are interested in, but also are going to be preparing them for their careers in the future. So again, I am happy to try to answer any questions. There is a full proposal in the book as well.
Are there any questions or follow-up from the committee? Okay, I think it's important to note that as of right now, both of these action items are set to move to the consent agenda for Friday's Board of Regents meeting. If the committee is in agreement, we need to state for the record that these 2 action items will move forward on the Friday, March 12th consent agenda for the board's consideration. Is everybody comfortable with that statement? And is there anyone that would like to make any comments?
Lisa, I also it is in the document, but I did neglect to say that this proposal was also reviewed by the Faculty Senate Executive Committee and in the fall and supported by them as well.
That's for both action items, correct?
I'm good with both.
Okay. Okay. Any other feedback? All right, so these will both show up on the consent agenda. They won't actually be discussed unless someone from the board wants to pull it from the consent agenda. But given our comments or lack thereof, it seems as though everyone is comfortable moving forward. So we will go ahead and place both of these items on the consent agenda for Friday, March 12th, Board of Regents meeting. Thank you. Okay, next up, we have on our agenda an undergraduate research presentation by Dr. Mary Sanchez Lanier. I'm excited to see this and was really pleased to see that our research isn't just focused on our graduate students, but also our undergraduate students as well. So Dr. Sanchez Lanier.
Well, thank you so much. And I want to thank you and Vice President Keene for inviting me here today, because really this is one of my favorite subjects to talk about. I have a few favorite subjects, and this is definitely amongst them. So I'm going to share my screen quickly here. And hopefully everyone can see the front slide. Okay, excellent. And so I've titled this presentation, Undergraduate Research, the WSU Advantage. And so part of what I hope to accomplish before I'm done is that you're all going to agree that this is a WSU advantage, both for undergraduates and for the institution itself. And I am Assistant Vice Provost in a unit called DASA, which is the Division of Academic Engagement and Student Achievement. So I've divided this into 3 parts. And so we're going to start out first talking about how undergraduate research benefits the university. Then we'll talk about how it benefits the undergraduates themselves. That is how we enhance the undergraduate experience with this opportunity. And then lastly, talk a little bit about the role that the Office of Undergraduate Research plays. And I want to emphasize before I start, first, I am a STEM faculty member, so my area is virology, but undergraduate research is all inclusive. It includes scholarship and creative activity. So the discussion includes everything that we're doing on our various campuses. So benefits to the university, that'll divide into talking a bit about recruitment, retention and graduation, prestige, and results. I want to start with recruitment. And first I'll say that being an R1 university, having a research intensive university does attract undergraduates to our institution. But we do have several programs that specifically target recruitment of students. For example, our Research Scholars Program targets top entering freshmen. Our Esteemed Mira program targets STEM students from underrepresented groups. And we also have summer programs for undergraduate research that bring students in from all over the country. The goal of that program is to recruit graduate students rather than recruiting undergraduates, although the research is targeted at undergraduates. The quote I have below is unsolicited, and so we didn't ask a student, tell us about this. It came up by another mechanism. And what this student says is, upon entering university, I was determined to get involved in research. I had based all my college decisions around this goal. I chose Washington State University because I was invited to join the Research Scholars Program, which teaches a small cohort of first-year students how to become involved in research. The main point here, of course, is these students do make decisions on the fact that we are a research university. Research also benefits retention and graduation. And this is not data that is unique to WSU. It is national data. There's mounds and mounds of publications around this topic. Undergraduate research is considered one of the high impact practices in undergraduate education that enhance student success. There are not that many practices that are designated high impact practices. And undergraduate research, to name a few of the benefits, it builds student confidence, particularly in students from more disadvantaged backgrounds. It has the benefit of close student-faculty interactions. It increases student engagement in their own learning, and it improves grades. And again, this has been shown in countless studies nationwide. Also brings prestige to Washington State University. Our students are amazing, and they truly are. In the blue on the right on this slide are all headlines from different news releases that we've done, and they match some of the examples on the left. So for example, students engaged in undergraduate research are winning national distinguished awards in every year, not occasionally, every year. For example, students winning the Goldwater. We see that every year. It's based on their research. Our students also attend national meetings and present the research they're doing, and they win awards at those national meetings. The example here is students presenting at the annual Biomedical Research Conference for minority students. Our students present their research not just nationally, all over the world. And so this example, Luis Cortez, who's now in an MD PhD program, presented the research he was doing as an undergraduate at a Gordon conference in Spain. And so WSU, through our undergraduates and the research they do, literally becomes known everywhere. Our undergraduates also bring results to our laboratories, to our research areas across the university. And so while we're doing this as part of their education, they're also doing it for us. They are contributing to faculty research. They are making real contributions. They are co-authors on publications. And undergraduates, truthfully, I've had many in my laboratory over the years, early when I was still involved in research, and they bring energy and ideas, no two ways about it, and it's just fun. Okay, a little bit about how the experience is enhanced for the undergraduate themselves, although everything I just mentioned matters to the undergraduates themselves as well. But let's talk about a couple things. First, some data. This data is collected through the National Survey for Student Engagement, and it's self-reported by the students. And it shows that about 8% of our freshmen get engaged in research and about 25% of our seniors. But more important to our undergraduates themselves, and I think this data is astounding, but not surprising, and that is 87% of employers stated they were more likely to hire graduates who completed research-based projects. And that was a study commissioned by the Association of American Colleges and Universities, 87%.
So Mary?
Yeah?
Yeah, thank you for the great slide deck. But when I saw this slide, I was astounded too, but it made me think, what are the other 13% thinking?
I would agree with you there.
Yeah, I don't, sorry to interrupt, but I just thought that was an amazing statistic.
I did too, and you thought the same thing I did. I was astounded by the statistic, but also not surprised, and why I agree, why wouldn't it be 100%? Absolutely agree with you there. And of course, it's for all of these reasons. We connect students to careers, those that get involved in undergraduate research. It is a real experience. The students are working on real problems. They're building their credibility as a professional. It's boosting their resumes. They're test driving their career. And even for students who don't go into research, the experience still gains them skills in their discipline that applies to whatever direction they go in. And so it is a way of connecting our majors to careers, to graduate school, to professional school. It is important for all of those. Our faculty connects students to opportunities. This experience connects students to opportunities. It may be internships, industry, government, potential employers, other universities, summer opportunities at other universities. The bottom line is having this experience gives students opportunities. And the faculty networks, that is who faculty know and who they work with, help our students network. They help our students make those connections. Our students develop lots of soft skills. I've listed a couple here, kind of the obvious ones, if you will. It's not limited to this list. We try to encourage our students to present their research, at least at a minimum, at events at WSU, such as the Showcase for Undergraduate Research and Creative Activity, or CIRCA, which I'll casually plug here, is March 29th, and I hope everyone will join us for that. But students gain skills in professional communication, critical thinking, teamwork, oh my goodness, yes, and leadership, resourcefulness, and problem solving, and of course, many others. This is my favorite, and it's my favorite as an educator. And that is, and this is something we need to do for all our students, and that is doors are opened even when students did not know they should knock. It's because we have great mentors in our faculty and great interactions when students get involved in research. And again, this is unsolicited. I got this from a student who'd filled out an application for something unrelated to this talk. The student says, before coming to college, I had no real intention of getting into research. And she goes on and says, that was the day my life would forever change. I joined the lab almost immediately and fell in love with just how different the research was than I had ever expected. I would not know then, but even after being hesitant to join the lab, this research experience would show me what would be my eventual career plans. I think that's powerful stuff, amazing opportunities. But I'll also add that even for students who don't want to go into research, it still changes their views and opens doors in many ways. Okay, lastly, talk a little bit about the role of the Office of Undergraduate Research. And I'm just going to brag a little bit here and say, I think we've done a remarkable job being a full service office with actually very few resources. We were established in 2006. We're part of the Division of Academic Engagement and Student Achievement, and that's in the Office of the Provost and Executive Vice President. We do things, for example, like help students get started in research. We offer a research prep course to incoming freshmen, or primarily incoming freshmen and transfer students. We also have a very energetic group of undergraduate research peer mentors who meet with students and talk to them about how to get started in research as well as their own experiences. We have some funding thanks to our donors, and we do fund undergraduate research awards in the form of scholarships. The gentleman here on the left did receive one of those undergraduate research awards, and yes, he is in Central America. He is chasing scat from big cats. I think it sounds totally cool. I'd kind of like to join him, to be honest. And based on this picture, it looks like a lot of fun. We also provide students with money for travel awards so that they can present their work at national meetings. The 3 students pictured here just presented and won awards. They're all WSU students, and they were in Florida. This was at Abercrombie's, which is one of my personal favorite meetings. We support opportunities for students to disseminate their research. And so coming up is CIRCA, which is part of the week of showcase events, this one for undergraduates. This year, in spite of the pandemic, we have about 150 students presenting their undergraduate research. That alone should get everybody excited. I would be delighted to have all of you attend, and I'll give you a little bit more on that in just a minute. We also have a summer research symposium that hosts both students and the students that come from outside of WSU, from all over the nation to do undergraduate research at WSU over the summer, number about 60 to 80 every summer. And they present their research along with our native WSU students at our summer research symposium. And of course, we do support students traveling to meetings to present their research. I mentioned summer research already, and we try to push that and encourage our students. Our office also supports a strong undergraduate research club. And they are, again, an enthusiastic bunch. Day before yesterday, they had an evening on careers in research. So this is in pandemic, in the middle of Zoom gloom and doom, where all of us get tired of being on Zoom. So at 6 p.m., they had more than 44 students attending this particular research club meeting. And that's the norm for them. We also support specialized programs. So we have a number that support underrepresented groups in STEM, and these include the esteemed MIRA and LSAMP programs, and one that's recommended for funding that I hope we will soon have called the MARC program. And then internally, we support things like the Research Scholars, which is a program for high ability incoming freshmen. The office, we have lots of challenges. Undergraduate research scholarships are limited in number, but the biggest challenge is the scholarships need to be large enough to replace income from paid jobs. So many of our students, they need to work, they're taking their classes, so they've got the academic challenges, and then they're in the research laboratory. We don't have the money to replace their paid jobs. So most of them are trying to balance quite a number of things. I'd like to see larger and more scholarships for these students. In addition, some of these students, they just can't do it. They can't balance all those things in the academic year. They would like to do research in the summer. To say we have limited summer opportunities for those students who don't have time in the academic year is an understatement. We just don't have the funding for those. And then another challenge certainly is we need to recognize our faculty for the time that they spend mentoring these students. If we value undergraduate research, we need to reward the people that are involved. And that needs to include in tenure and promotion decisions, helping financially with those faculty who are supporting these students with lab money from grants and so on. And then not just rewards, but awards as well for faculty who excel in these areas. So the last thing I want to mention is join us at Circa. This is our showcase again for undergraduate research and creative activities. It's March 29th. The open sessions are from 3 o'clock to 4:15. In about a week and a half or so, our website will have all of the Zoom connections in order to get on for the oral live presentations that our students will be making. You can select from 120 or so different presentations being presented by about 150 undergraduates. And if you're really inclined, we would be delighted to have you as a judge at Circa. And so it's all disciplines. We have categories in all areas. And so if that is of interest to you, sign up to be a judge. And with that, I'll end and see if I have any questions, comments, anything else.
Thank you very much. That was an excellent presentation, Dr. Chilton.
Well, first of all, even though the Office of Undergraduate Research reports to the Provost Office, Mary and I have not yet had a chance to meet in person. So I just wanted to publicly say hello and thank you for what you do. I learned even more about the Office of Undergraduate Research through your presentation, and I'm really impressed. One additional benefit that I wanted to add, and this you may have experienced yourself, is that often when students get involved in research, like myself, a first generation college student, I never would have imagined myself going on in academia. In fact, my parents were not so thrilled about that. And I'm not suggesting that we need more academics in the world, although we need a more diverse academy. And this is a way to bring in first generation underrepresented students to see the value of contributing to the creation of knowledge, not just the, acquiring of knowledge, but they get involved in that knowledge discovery process. So just to underscore again what you said about this being so critical to what we do as a public research university. So thank you.
Provost Shelton, I echo everything you said, and that's how I got into the business myself, was through one of these programs as an undergraduate, without question. Greg.
Yes, thank you, Mary. That was fabulous, as I expected it to be. Also, having been in a situation to have worked with and mentored a lot of undergraduate research students, I wanted to say one thing that often is overlooked. Within that setting, within that research setting, we oftentimes have postdocs, graduate students, undergraduates, faculty members, staff assistants, all of that. And a lot of times, those learning communities are composed of people from all over the world. So it really gives these students an opportunity to learn how to work in a diverse environment with people that may not look like them or speak like them. It is just an understated yet really powerful sort of benefit that can't be replicated in a lot of other ways. So thank you.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
I have a question. What's your diversity breakdown? Can you address that?
So I wish I could just give you the numbers off the top of my head, but I'm actually feel like we're doing quite well with that. And the reason for that goes back to federal programs that promote undergraduates and from underrepresented groups. And so every year at CIRCA, the LSAMP program, which is Louis Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation, it's a National Science Foundation funded program, matches the awards that we provide at CIRCA with awards of their own for their students that win awards. When we first started CIRCA, so Louis Stokes program is also under me. And when we first started, we might give out 3 or 4 awards, and it wasn't a matching awards to our LSAM students, and it wasn't a big hit on our budget. The last couple of years, I'm like, okay, guys, we've got to have a serious line item on our budget for this, because the number of students getting awards, not just participating, but getting awards, has increased by leaps and bounds. Last year we had, unfortunately, CIRCA was canceled, but the year before, I think we ran about 7 award winners that specifically fell in the underrepresented groups category. This is not even including those low income other categories. This was underrepresented minorities funded by LSAM. So it's pretty amazing. I'm getting ready right now to make offers for our Research Scholars Program. And I was going through the list. I was so excited. I can't begin to tell you of the students that we're selecting now. Half of the ones we're making offers to come from students that are in various underrepresented groups, underrepresented in STEM areas. So I think we're doing pretty well. Our 2 newest programs, well, one newest program and one hopefully new, are National Institutes of Health programs. And they support students, again, specifically from disadvantaged backgrounds or students with disabilities, underrepresented groups. And those, I think, are going to make a huge difference to our institution, because the money is large for those students. The provost office has provided considerable amounts of matching for those grants. And already I'm seeing so much enthusiasm from the faculty involved and other grant programs. I think they're going to be, it's going to be an opportunity. We'll just say that. I think we can do so much better, but I think we're also coming along well. Our biggest challenge will forever remain the financial disparity, and for students to get involved in research. And so many of our students are doing it for academic credit, and our disadvantaged students cannot afford that. And the balance of work and lab work and academics is overwhelming for the best of students. And for those who struggle anyway, it is really a challenge. And that's why we keep applying for more grants. And love to see more donors for all of those reasons. Ultimately, that's our biggest challenge. Sorry, that was a long.
No.
In various
That's
directions.
fine. You
answer.
obviously have tremendous passion for this, and I am glad to see that it is it's a focus and a concern, and I can totally see that the financial end of it, because when you are a student of color, I would say the majority of them probably don't have the financial means, to be able to balance these things, and that's tough. But it's also too bad because you're probably losing some good folks.
And losing some people that could have been potentially our next Nobel Prize winners, but don't have the advantage of getting there, because the ideas that students from different backgrounds bring new perspective to our problems. That's why we love having them in the lab to start with. It's just the enthusiasm, the perspective. It's true in the classroom as well. The questions we get, if they're just force us to think about things differently.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
Thank you.
I'm curious what some of those solutions might look like. Is it scholarships specifically for this type of work? How do you break that cycle so that you do see more underrepresented students able to participate in undergraduate reserch?
So scholarships.
I was just going to mention, one quick one. We're starting to plan for our campaign, and this high impact learning experiences has been identified, as Mary said at the beginning, through lots of research to really be just that, be seen to have the highest impact on both diversifying student success and preparing students for their careers, whatever they decide to do. And I personally would like to make this a major focus of our campaign for academic affairs. I did this at Binghamton right before I left. We were just coming out of a silent phase of a campaign, and one of our alumni endowed a program for $1 million. It was a lead gift. And $1 million sounds like a lot of money, except if you're creating an endowment that generated enough to help, 150 students a year. But, out of 20,000 students, we wanted to expand that obviously throughout our campaign. And I would really like to work with Mary and others across with Chris to really make this a major focus of our campaign, because that's how you leverage the importance. A lot of times it's hard to understand the importance of research in thinking about undergraduate education, right? For those of us who think about it all the time, it's a natural, but it isn't something necessarily that is well communicated to the public and to the taxpayers. And so it's something I would really, that's one way is really making it an important focus of the campaign, as well as the kinds of grants that Mary has already applied for that can be used as matching with donor gifts and state funds to leverage even more.
I really appreciate that. So while I don't have the ability to write $1 million check, understanding exactly how we connect to this kind of work is so critically important. This wasn't an area as a first gen college student I was able to partake in because of exactly what you've outlined. I had 2 jobs and I had tons of student debt because just getting over the barrier of being able to achieve a college education was a huge lift, let alone think about what would that look like for me to potentially go on to earn my master's or my PhD. So this is an area that I was so excited to see that was on our agenda, but one that I'd like to continue to understand how we can find ways to see this as part of our overall kind of dashboard in terms of how are we doing. Connecting to high impact learning experiences makes all of that, academic experience so much more rich. So this is fantastic. And that presentation was really great. Chris?
The Regents are going to make a couple of comments as well. First of all, thanks, Mary. I'll come back in a second. It was a great talk. Like you, Elizabeth, and others, I got my start with undergraduate research as well, doing gravitational wave research, which of course, that they've now been discovered here in Washington State at LIGO. But back when I did it before electricity, our detectors weren't sensitive enough, and but now they are, and so it was discovered. Secondly, Mary, thank you again. I just wanted to add that when Mary gave this talk, or a version of this talk, to our research council, which was under, basically associate deans for research and other leaders, it was a huge hit. I mean, everyone, Mary, at that meeting, appreciated what you said. They appreciated hearing more about it, and they sort of known obviously a lot about it, but it made a big difference internally too. And I think it's really spurred a lot more discussion. And just building, I'd like to point out that, in my travels, I talked to obviously a lot of other VPRs. Our program at WSU is really very strong when you look at other programs around the country. It's got a lot of facets, including, for example, the NSF summer program. Here, the REU, you talked about research experience for undergraduates. That's a very highly regarded program, and we actually have a highly regarded version of it here at WSU every summer. So it's really extraordinarily strong and diverse. I just wanted to point that out. And Lisa, to your point, I think we should think about, a dashboard in some way, track this, but it's definitely aids our overall research enterprise at the university in a major way. And I think your talk really brings a lot of those connections to light. So thanks again.
Thank you. It's certainly something I get excited about. And those of you who had the experience or wished you could have had the experience, look at it and say, gosh, yes, we want that for as many students as can. So you brought up one thing I just want to add to, and this is something that the National Institutes of Health recognizes. It's good to replace income that students, when they have to work those multiple jobs, but we actually have to do more than that, because most of the time they still have loans. And it's not just a matter of replacing the money lost. And so, for example, the one of the grants we have from National Institutes of Health, it's supporting the students at a $12,000 during the academic year annually for the 4 years. The one that is currently approved for funding, but we haven't yet gotten a letter of award, is a training grant, and it covers a little bit higher on the stipend and partial tuition coverage. Again, to give the students the freedom to be able to really engage and get the confidence and the things they need to get out of it.
Awesome. Really great work. I just wanted to add one more comment. So Regent Powell, she and I were back and forth a little bit this morning because she wasn't able to make this meeting, and just expressed how critically impactful it was for her in her studies as an undergrad. She said between her summer of sophomore and junior year, she did some undergraduate research, and that it was just incredibly impactful. So I think she's got some real experience too as a member of the Board of Regents, and can speak to just the great work that you're doing. So thank you, and keep up the good work.
Well, thank you guys again for inviting me. Again, I'm just so delighted to talk about this, so I appreciate it. Thanks again, Vice President Keene.
Thank you.
Okay, and if there's no other questions, I will sign off.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks again.
All right, so our Office of Research update, Vice President Keene.
Okay, thank you, Regent Shower. It's okay, I'll share. I just have a couple of slides. Let me do that. Let me get this over here first. Okay. Okay, hold on. Okay, pardon me one sec. Just getting this set up right. Okay. There we go, and let me go full screen here. Okay, can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So
Chris, you have it in presenter view.
Oh, okay, all right, hold on a second. Let me do this. Let me go back to this one. Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Looks great.
Okay, so there's the title slide. We're all looking at the same slide now. Okay. So just a couple of slides. So first of all, I just want to start off this with, I think you may have already heard this, Regent Shower and committee members, but we were very pleased to have Professor Juming Tang from Connors named to the National Academy of Engineering, a few weeks ago. You may recall hearing about some of Professor Tang's work. The second bullet there talks about commercialization of electromagnetic spectrum wave-based food processes. What that means is he uses a microwave with a different frequency than you use at home, okay? And what he does is, by microwaving food and storing in a special pouch, he can produce very long shelf life foods with extraordinarily good nutrition and taste, used, for example, by the military, by NASA, et cetera. And so there's just been a tremendous amount of innovative fundamental science in this area. And Juming also, as you may have heard, has had great public impact through bringing this to the market. He has his own company, 915 Technologies. 915 refers to 915 megahertz, the frequency of his special microwave oven, where he basically has a very strong commercial application of all this. So it's just great to see our faculty recognized like this, to get another National Academy member. Okay, let's see. I have one other chart. I want to give you a little bit of a heads up on something we're in the midst of right here. So this is a plot of our research expenditures. You've seen it before, and it's plotted, as a function of time from 1994 to the present through 2019. And Regent Shower, you talked about this last time, the various components, but just to go through it again, at the bottom there is sort of the lightish blue is federal, then working your way up, there's state, industry, internal funding, institutional support, and then finally other activities. And this is what we actually spend on research again. So when we get a research award, the money comes in either all at once or in a series of chunks, and then we spend it over time. And what's recorded is expenditures. And the reason I'm bringing this up here is, and you may have heard about this, Regent Shower and other members, from President Schultz's, weekly reports. But it turns out we had an oversight in how internal research expenditures for foundation-generated monies, in other words, the dark blue piece, were reported in 2019. Okay, and that resulted in an over-reporting by about $25 million. Okay, so this slide, when it gets corrected, you'll see that the 2019 total dropped by about that amount. There will also be some smaller corrections in 18 and 17, not due to that, but due to some internal accounting on how expenditures are done. Let me say a little bit more about this. In terms of thinking about how we spend money on research, you might think, well, you just keep track of all your money and how much you spend on research and you add it up. What's so hard about that? Well, it turns out to be not so easy to track this because, as you know from our hearing about Workday, we don't have perfect knowledge of how we spend all our money in detail by mission, for example. So assembling a number for research expenditures is not a trivial issue. In fact, when we close a fiscal year on June 30th, we typically, right now, don't get the expenditure number until February of the following year. It takes 7 or 8 months almost to generate the number. I'm pleased to say that when we get Workday fully involved in this, which will be starting this current fiscal year, obviously, we'll do this both better, more accurately, and quicker. Okay, and so I think some of the issues that underlay what happened with our internal accounting on here certainly are going to be addressed by Workday. So anyway, I just want to let you know this. We're going to be restating the numbers for 19, also some smaller changes in 18, 17, actually quite soon. Probably actually by the end of next week is the deadline to report any changes in this to the National Academy, to the NSF, which tracks these numbers for us. But anyway, just wanted you to know that it is what it is. And I think we certainly will be able to do a more accurate job on this via Workday in the future. So with that said, I think let me just mention a couple of other trends that sort of obtained from this. and they're not on the slide, but I'll just mention them briefly for the sake of time. One trend from COVID that we're seeing at WSU, okay, and elsewhere is that our awards are up, okay, and some of that's due to relief funds and some of that's due to graded research awards. But actually our expenditures are going down a bit, okay, because we can't spend as fast because our laboratories haven't been fully populated, and our campus for a number of months obviously was not fully open, right? So institutions across the country are seeing reductions in expenditures. They're seeing an increase in awards and a reduction in expenditures, basically. It's a very, very simple way to put it. And we're seeing that here. And I'll talk more about that the next meeting as we start to get more data available on that. This isn't quite this subject. Stacy's talked about it, but we've been pretty successful in getting relief funds for COVID here, and a lot of that's been applied to student expenses. We basically have not applied that to research yet at this point. But if we do at some point, that might show up in this chart. Again, I don't have time to get into it. I'm really glad we spent time on Mary's talk, but we also have gotten a number of significant awards this most recent award period. So our faculty are continuing to prosper and do well, within the pandemic. And like I say, next month, I'll be able to spend a little bit more time on that. But so a quick update. Next time we meet, this chart will be updated. But I wanted you to be aware of this. Obviously, this changed before we sent updated numbers to NSF and so on and so forth. So thanks for the time and the opportunity to update you on this one. Yeah, Greg.
So thank you, Chris. Maybe a year ago, we were talking about this particular slide. And one of the things that I'd ask at that time is to correlate the number of faculty, the age of the faculty that are generating
yes,
expenditures in relation to their proximity to retirement, given that it's, about 5 years from when you bring an assistant professor on to the point that they're successful, hopefully sooner, to secure external funding that can then power expenditures. So two questions. Where are we in terms of the age of the faculty generating this and our ability to recruit and retain new faculty to take the retirement place? And how does this correlate to some of our aging research infrastructure in terms of some of our core facilities are in what's been phrased managed decline?
Yeah, great questions, Greg. So let me take the faculty age spectrum first and rank. And so actually we've done that. We've actually done Gita Dutta's office within OR. Gita's led that along with Emily Carbaugh and working with the colleges. We've looked at the demographics in detail. So let me just say a couple of quick comments on it. First of all, in the big picture, if you look at our faculty in terms of 1 to N, in terms of who brings in a certain number of awards, it follows very close to an 80-20 rule, maybe even an 85-20 rule. Okay, with the top 50 faculty bringing somewhat over 80% of the awards, and the top 20 actually bringing in 50% of the awards, I think. So we have a few faculty that do a lot. In terms of age, we definitely, it turns out, our senior faculty, say 50 and above, are the most productive at bringing in the larger awards, right, as you might expect. The junior faculty bring in more smaller ones. I think probably the simplest thing to do would be to show you, Greg, this actually we have gone through, we briefed it to the Research Council. We've got to brief it to other organizations, the whole demographic study. So I can show you that. There is a correlation with infrastructure too. That's kind of interesting topic because there's discussion nationally about an infrastructure bill which might include research. And so actually WSU, along with all our APU colleagues, are trying to get a handle on our total installed research infrastructure base for purposes of arguing for money for an infrastructure bill, actually. So we know anecdotally it's a real issue, but the issue is quantifying that. And I'd be glad to chat with you more about that offline.
Thank you.
Yeah, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Oh, go ahead, Brett.
Question? Yeah, thank you, Lisa. If it's not too cumbersome, sort of a related line of thinking to Greg's inquiry, if you're going to reduce some of these slides, I'd be curious if it's not too cumbersome, the federal division of which of the various colleges are recipients of that, and state as well.
Yeah.
It might be helpful to know how that's being generated and who's focusing on the university's research, since various board members fan out and interact with a lot of different politicians. I'm curious where that might, instead of just one tall graph, how that might be broken out, if it's possible to gain that data.
Sure.
That would be really super simple, especially because the National Science Foundation does a higher education research and development survey, and it breaks it out by field, and we submit to that survey every year, and we can actually look at trends over time. So that would be super easy to produce, either a link to an interactive chart or a series of static charts. One last thing, though, I did want to mention is that by the switch for Workday, as Chris said, we will be able to refine the light blue on the bottom, which is no, that's federal on the bottom, the darker blue on the top, which is the institutional support. Because this is all, the institutional support is all self-reported data. Institutions vary a great deal over what they include in that. Now, the NSF does provide guidelines, and so it's not as if people are making up data, but some of them are fuzzy, and some institutions err on a little more over-reporting and some under-reporting. This will just allow us to make sure that we're being consistent and transparent about what we're including in that institutional support. You know, one example, some institutions include what they, the cost of supporting sabbaticals, and other institutions don't. And, you know, those are the kinds of things that this will allow us with Workday to take a close look at and make sure that we're appropriately reporting that institutional level support in relation to the other kinds.
Right. Exactly. Thank you. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Any other questions? Okay, so I have a question relative to expenditures and faculty. One of the charts that you've kind of shown us in the past was a chart that had research expenditures and faculty count, and expenditures were going this way and faculty count was going the other way, right? And it's a trend that I really want us to pay attention to. It feels to me like the bottom line is we're doing really well, and yet we don't have maybe as much of the resources that we need in order to continue to do well. And so I was curious if you had any insight. Is the trend continuing? Have we plateaued and we're going the other direction on the faculty count, or any insight you can share, Chris?
Yeah, sure, Regent Shower. Great question. So the trend continues, basically. I mean, so when this is fixed up, you may remember that we were at a peak of about 400K of expenditures per tenure track, you know, 365 or whatever, K, 369 divided by 920 or so tenured faculty. So now instead of 365, it's 340. So it's a bit lower, but, you know, so we're at 350 or 60 probably per K per faculty. So that's still quite high amongst our peers. So the big picture, it hasn't changed. In fact, when you look at when these numbers get fixed, I think actually one thing is going to make a bit more sense. What you're going to start to see is, you know, basically the trend in expenditures more closely parallel in the total of expenditures, more closely trending the number of faculty decreasing. The number of faculty has been decreasing because we haven't been filling slots. And so in fact, again, I'm just hypothesizing based on some early numbers I've seen, but I think you're going to see expenditures start to lag the faculty size by about a year, which actually makes sense. So, but the short story is the trend that you mentioned is still there.
Okay, how are we comparing with our peers with that trend?
So, you know, and this is a bit anecdotal. I've got some better numbers I can bring them to you. You know, we're again sort of 350 or so, 350K per faculty member. A number of our aspirational peers are somewhat lower than that. I think Purdue is only 275. Okay, So in fact, our 400, I think we are still quite near the top of our current internal peer set we used to rank against. I mean, at 400K, we were at the top, okay? So I think we're still quite close to that number. I'm sorry, I don't have it right in front of me, but we have that list.
But Lisa, I think your question too is important in terms of comparing to our peers about the numbers of tenured and tenure track faculty. The last two public research institutions that I've been at have seen those numbers decline since 2008. And I would guess that that's a national trend, but I would like to see how we compare. I don't know, but that's something we could bring back.
Yeah, since
That
2000.
doesn't mean it's good, but there is a national trend in that direction.
I think that would be helpful, and then how we're comparing. And I'm interested in, Greg's comments around the age of the faculty. And so there's lots of complexity here, but I think there's a story that we need to make sure that we're understanding from a board perspective, and also understanding how we can be supportive of what we need, because this is the work that we do, is educating our students. So I appreciate the report out. Thank you, Chris. Anything else before we transition? Okay, so we have two more items. Both are items for Provost Chilton. The first is a degree renaming and degree extension. And then the second is the establishment of new institutes approved. Both were approved under delegated authority. So,
Right. Well, thank you. So the information is in your packets, but first under information item 3 under delegated authority, we have a degree rename, the renaming of the Master of Science in Applied Economics degree. And that is, let me just pull up my notes here. So the College of Agriculture, Human and Natural Resources Sciences and the School of Economic Sciences proposed renaming the Master of Science in Applied Economics to the Master of Science in Economics. That in part has to do with historical mergers of departments, but giving the degree a more general name of economics reflects the nature of the degree as it's currently being offered, and sort of expands opportunities for students who want to gain more applied quantitative economic skills, certainly something that's valued by industry currently. So the full proposal was passed by the Faculty Senate this fall, and obviously supported by my office and signed by Kirk in December. The second was a degree extension. This one, I'm hoping Paul will let out a big yelp of and hurrah, and we can all do it for him. But it extends the Bachelor of Arts in Business Administration degree to the WSU Everett campus. The Carson College of Business proposed to extend the Bachelor of Arts degree to that campus. Obviously in the memo, you can see that this is part of their Everett strategic plan. And again, this was also supported by the Faculty Senate and signed by the president. It's an existing degree that will now be offered on the Everett campus. And so since Paul's not going to do it, I'm going to do a little hurrah. There he goes. Clapping. He's clapping. He's clapping.
Thank you very much. Very happy to have the BABA in Everett, and it's going to be an excellent complement to the programs we already have. So we're really excited. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Absolutely. Any Great. Questions or about that one? Those two, I should say.
Okay. Hearing none.
And the second one.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
The second one is informational item 4, which is the establishment of new institutes, which were also both approved by the president. And I will ask Chris Keene if what I'm about to say is correct. I used to work for the research office at UMass, And this was actually one of my primary responsibilities was the approval of new institutes and centers and the periodic review of existing centers. And universities often proliferate them and then, don't know what to do with them once they're established. And so one of my jobs, it was a tough job, was to go through and make sure they were all active, review them each year, because the idea of institutes and centers is they really should be responding to current interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary research needs that you can't accomplish in an existing department under current disciplinary rubrics. So in both of these cases, there are applications for opportunities that will hopefully bring in additional sponsored research, will hopefully attract faculty and support faculty who are working in transdisciplinary areas, and really reflect the true nature of the work that's already happening, but gives a home, a shingle, a name, and opportunities for focused scholarship. So the two are the Institute for Research and Education in Advanced Community Health, or IREACH. And this is a community health focused institute focusing on health disparities, obviously a very timely and important area of work that we're already doing actually in a number of areas across our system. So we just give, as I say, a research home, a hub for external funding and scholarship. And the second is the Steve Gleason Institute for Neuroscience, providing an integrative approach to neurodegenerative disease, also including education, caregiver support, clinical care, and clinical and preclinical brain research. So the goals are listed in the handout of the Institute. Also focused on community benefits and in line with our land grant mission. Both of these really are very much so. And also both were also approved by the Faculty Senate late this fall. Happy to, yes, Chris, but you want to correct anything that I said?
No, Elizabeth, I'm just going to endorse everything you said. I just add just a little background. On IREACH, the first institute you mentioned, Regent Schauer and colleagues, you may remember that a few years ago, Professor Deidre Buchwald and I believe Daryl presented on that at the Regents here. That's been an amazing center, just tremendous impact in community health. I've done very well with NIH, extraordinarily funding well with NIH funding due to Dr. Buchwald's knowledge and experience. The Gleason Center is a litany, and that was brought to WSU about 5 or 6 years ago. IREACH was from the UW, and then of course we had our own capability here, so it was a merge. The Gleason Institute is formally new, but it's been around for some time. Actually, of course, it scientifically capitalizes on our expertise in neuroscience, which is actually a very strong system-wide capability. With most of our expertise in Spokane, Pullman, and also Vancouver. There's a nice neuroscience effort in Vancouver as well. And Regent Schauer may know about that. Anyway, okay. So yeah, and thanks, Elizabeth. Perfect.
Really exciting work. Any questions, comments? Okay. All right, so that is our agenda for our meeting today. I did have one question that I was hoping Provost Chilton, you might be able to provide us with a little bit of timing and schedule around the academic calendar for the fall. I'm sure that conversation is underway. Do you know at what point that'll be in front of this committee for discussion or update information sharing?
That's a good question. Certainly at this point, we have not put on the table any changes to our typical academic calendar. We are planning for a robust in-person experience on the Pullman campus, with a priority for moving very large lectures to remote instruction, but focusing on classes with students under 100 students, and really spreading them out in case we're not fully there yet in terms of our vaccinations and the nature of the pandemic. but then also focusing on some of these high impact learning experiences, the small section labs, discussion sections, and such. So we're building the fall schedule now in terms of the class schedule that should be released in April. So faculty are working with their course schedulers in their department to actually build the fall course schedule. I don't have more information than that right now, but certainly by that time, by April 1st, we certainly will need to have announced our schedule.
I think it would be helpful to understand the plan for each of the campuses in terms of the in-person experience or the hybrid or online. And of course, we're seeing the pandemic is continually changing in terms of the vaccine and the timing and how to ensure that we're doing it in a safe way. I knew all of that planning was already happening. I just was curious on the timing in terms of when announcements will be made about what to plan for relative to the fall. So
yeah. So April 1st is really the time that we're all aiming for each campus to at least have our best, I don't want to say best guess because that sounds a little too wishy-washy, but our best understanding of the current state of the pandemic. Of course, even from April 1st to August 1st, things are going to change. We hope for the better, but we don't know that for sure. And so we, in announcing our schedule on April 1st to students, and that's across the system, we have to acknowledge and put asterisks next to it that things might change given what the public health context is, and also the guidelines from the governor's office, which were, we obviously need to follow. For example, just as one tiny example, we only today received guidelines for offering in-person campus tours for admissions from the governor's office. And so, we're following those guidelines very strictly, but we will need to respond to things that are coming from outside, obviously, the university itself. Greg, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to say one thing. I have to give a shout out to the registrar's office, which falls under the provost office, because they have been working their tails off with all of these different changes and scenarios, working on the schedule, working on classroom locations, working on size constraints, and they've just done a fantastic job, and I just wanted to recognize them.
Thank you so much, Greg. And that's partly why I wish that we could be more certain, because I hate to ask them to do all this work and then, in July or something, we're asking them to change it again. I mean, that's their jobs and they will do it and they will do it well, but we're trying to really give our best estimation. That's why I say we're really, for our large classes on the Pullman campus, we're assuming we're not going to be able to have 200 to 300 people sitting elbow to elbow by mid-August. I could be wrong, but that is an assumption that I am making at this time. And so we're not planning for classes that are packed in like that. We're supporting the current social distancing, really spreading people out in the classrooms. And that's why Greg says, they're really going above and beyond. They're not doing anything like business as usual. And the other campuses have a little more flexibility, the non-Pullman campuses, because in general, they have smaller class sizes. And so if they can spread out throughout other hours of the day, they can spread people out. Also, I know most of the other classrooms are set up for high flex, which means that if you're in a small classroom, you can turn on a camera. You could have half the class present and half the class remote. We don't really have the ability to do that with some of these large format classes in Pullman. So as you point out, Regent Shower, we are going to have a slightly different iteration for each of our campuses. Paul, am I expressing correctly that April 1st is also for the other campuses the time by which we at least intend to announce to students what our intentions are for fall?
Yes, that's correct. And I would concur that, just what we're looking at is kind of testing some things in the summer, and then in the fall, we're hoping to have that kind of a high flex approach. WSU Everett, we do have the capability of having students present, and then also sending that video signal to them and their computers. So, so we'll have students kind of splitting time between classroom and being at home, that type of thing. But we're really looking forward to having students back on campus.
And Chancellor Haynes, I'm sorry I didn't call you out there. I don't know if you want to speak to Tri-Cities.
I do my best work on mute. Anyway, yes, we're very much like Paul is. We actually have a return to work plan that we'll be submitting soon, in which we lay out how much we think we can open immediately, in 90 days, in another 90 days, and by fall. And so we should have that to you absolutely by the 1st of April, and then likely through the other routes after that.
Terrific.
Great, thank you. I'm curious, Greg, I know we're a little bit over time, but I was wondering if you could provide a bit of a pulse from the faculty in terms of kind of going back to in-person classes and what sort of reaction you're receiving or hearing.
Well, I think it all winds up with the vaccine schedule. I think a lot of, that's totally outside of our control. So from what I understand, that is the concern. And issues like, can we mandate vaccination of students when they come back to campus in the fall, which we can't. So there are a lot of it's pretty much safety. And I think that one of the things that the provost office has made very clear is that faculty that could have risk factors won't be forced, if you will, to come back into the classroom. Elizabeth, that's correct? And yeah, and so I think the faculty are anxious to get back. I'm anxious to get back in front of the classroom and be off Zoom and off iPads and off of leaving my microphone muted. And, the engagement problems that we have over Zoom are real. Students fall off. We're just calculating midterm grades that were due yesterday. So I think everybody's very anxious to return as soon as it's safe for everyone, because it is our mission.
And I'm very optimistic, and although I am usually an optimistic person, but I like to think I'm realistic. I believe by early summer that all adults in Whitman County, and this is might end up being very different county by county, but for the Pullman campus, I believe by June 30th or so, that all adults will be able to get the vaccine if they want one, and that will change a number of faculty who I have spoken to. They say, if I have the vaccine and we are still supporting social distancing, I am fine with being in the classroom in the fall. So I'm asking faculty to not tell their departments right now whether they wish to request to remain remote, because I believe that by June or so, they may change their mind on that. And so I'm asking them to hold that thought, and we'll put together a process by which they can make that request.
And a lot of the lessons learned through all of this, we've had some really good lessons, and we know how to modernize our approach that will carry over past the pandemic into a better delivery of education to all different, to our students. It's not all been bad, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Adapting and changing can be a good thing. It's just uncomfortable. So I appreciate the update. I know it wasn't on the schedule. Each community is managing their vaccinations differently, and in Clark County, we are behind. And so I certainly think that the impact of where each of the campuses are and where the students are coming from is another complexity that you're trying to anticipate as we get ready to start the fall. So thank you for letting me take a bit of a departure. And I want to make sure that Des does not come on the screen and say we are over time and we need to wrap up. I do know that our next Regent meeting, that is a meeting of the full board, starts at 1 p.m. So we will wrap up this meeting and take a bit of a break. And the YouTube link for the afternoon meetings can be found on the WSU Board of Regents website. And so unless anyone has anything else to share or to add, we'll go ahead and conclude this meeting. And again, I appreciate the presentations from today and really enjoy having the smaller group committee meeting where we're able to see what's happening within the Office of Research and Academic Affairs. So with that, we will close the meeting and I will see everyone at 1 p.m.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks all.
Well done. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.